Before I begin, I'd like to answer the questions of Effluent for you. He says, I'm not sure you can gain ground if you're not open to the idea that there are three of you. Gain ground in what way? Does he mean gain success? And the three of me consists of one material, one spiritual, and the third in between. It makes me think of the ego, the id, and the superego. And he continues, in my opinion, you very much take one hat over another, missing something. So I don't really know what he's saying. I assume that he means. I don't know what he means, but he seems to think he has advice to give me because he thinks he's more spiritual than me. What does it mean to be spiritual? It's just a feeling, isn't it? It's supposed to mean what is it supposed to mean? It means being good, feeling good, being transcendent. I would define spirituality as the desire for justice and the idea that all is right in the world when you think you've behaved correctly or done something properly, usually to do with the worship of God. And the opposite of that is an unquiet mind, anxiety, disturbance, distress, a bad conscience, to the extent that it drives you mad. Sort of like Lady Macbeth, who wants to wash the bloodstains out of her hand when she attempts to wash her hands. Well, she washes her hands, doesn't she, night after night, saying, out, out, damned spot, out, or words to that effect. Because she'd helped in the murder of Banquo, the king who was murdered in the Macbeth household. So this connects to the idea of white people being cursed by God because they've done something wrong. This is a Greek saying, but I don't see why it shouldn't be transposed from Jupiter to the Abrahamic God. It just means that if you've done something wrong and the gods curse you, or the Abrahamic God curses you, then you're for it. So obviously it's some sort of transgression. You've displeased the gods, and you are about to receive punishment. So I'm not quite sure what Jupiter was punishing, but we know that various characters in Greek mythology have been punished by gods for doing things that they didn't actually know would provoke the curse of God or a god. We have Wikipedia entry that on whom the gods would destroy they first made mad. So it appears in the in Antigone by Sophocles, translated it, into English. It says, "Evil appears as good in the minds of those whom God leads to destruction." Goodness me, it does sound a bit like us. So let us talk about what it means to be mad, or stupid, or evil. Lately, I have been saying that it doesn't really matter which you are, because if you do something mad or evil or silly, the consequences are the same. So it doesn't really matter, and madness is stupidity, which is also evil, which is basically going against the rules. If you transgress the rules for whatever reason, then you will end up in a bad place. So the next thing we'll do is discuss what is meant by a curse. A curse, also called an imprecation, malediction, execration, malison, anathema, commination, is any expressed wish that some form of adversity or misfortune will befall or attach to one or more persons, a place, or an object. In particular, curse may refer to such a wish or pronouncement made effective by a supernatural or spiritual power, such as a god or gods, a spirit or natural force, or else as a kind of spell by magic, usually black magic or witchcraft. In the latter sense, a curse can also be called a hex or a jinx. In many belief systems, a curse itself or accompanying ritual is considered to have some causative force in the result. To reverse or eliminate a curse is sometimes called removal or breaking, as the spell has to be dispelled and often requires elaborate rituals or prayers. So there we are. To lift the curse requires elaborate rituals and prayers. It will be inconvenient. It will be radical. It will be disturbing. To even think that one is cursed for some reason or other. So have Westerners good reason to think that they might be cursed? Well, if they believed in God, they would know that God has certain rules, certain laws found in scripture, very ancient, that we are to follow, and obviously if there are rules to follow and we have not followed them, then we are in trouble. And so, having found ourselves in trouble, can we lift the curse? I'm saying, surely this is possible. In theory, anyway. You express regret after realizing that you have done wrong, you go through the process of remorse, penitence, or shuva, as the Jews would say. It is a 4-step process of the 4 of them. I keep forgetting the order. Cessation, confession, resolution, and restitution. So obviously you stop doing the thing that you know is wrong, and then you confess that it is wrong, and then you resolve never to do it again, and you make amends for the wrong and harm that you have done. So are we anywhere near that? It seems we are going further and further from acknowledging that we have done anything wrong at all, because we are so established in our bad behavior that we no longer acknowledge that once upon a time people were not accepting what is now the culture, the practice that is in question. Now, if you want to think of when the problem started, I suppose it began a long, long time ago. In fact, it may not have been ever correct in the first place. So it's not like you were right and then you strayed away. I think that the situation is that you were never correct, and it's just gotten worse and worse and worse and worse. So it's not like people were Jewish or Muslim and followed the rules correctly. They were polytheists, and then they became Christians, which means they were never properly doing what they should be doing. So what I suppose back in pagan days, back in pre-Christian European paganism, that's all already idolatry. But did Christianity make it worse or better? Well, it's such a mixed bag, Christianity, because on the one hand it refers to the correct religion, and then it goes entirely against it. So it's very peculiar, very confusing, and the only thing we can say about Christianity is that it is idolatry. And then the next question you might ask is, well, before that, when it was purely pagan, was that worse or better than Christianity? I suppose technically Christianity, wrong though it is, provided a time of progression and advancement for as long as Europeans observed, respected the institution of marriage, so that they could, almost get away with idolatry and blasphemy, provided they practiced marriage, and this they did. So as long as they isolated in their minds the requirement to believe that Jesus is God, and they half believed it and half didn't. They didn't quite agree. They didn't dare to ask in case they got burnt at the stake or in some lesser form of trouble. So it was something they kind of isolated, like a virus in their mind, I suppose. So I don't know if it counts properly about um, it being idolatry. I mean, can you blame Europeans for being Christian if they were basically forced into believing it? They weren't given a choice, and if they believed in something else or said they believed in something else or said they didn't believe, they would be burnt at the stake. So, in a way, you can't, you're not supposed to really blame them, can you? If people were forced into believing in something absurd or forced into pretending to believe in something that is patently absurd. But anyway, it is traumatizing. Traumatizing to keep suffering this cognitive dissonance, such as idolatry is forbidden, but we must worship uh, a man who was executed for blasphemy, to but you have to worship this executed blasphemer as the co-equal of the God that he was convicted of blaspheming against. So it's all very odd, all very absurd, almost inexplicable, uh, unless you accept my explanation for it all. So what is traumatizing about it is the confusion it causes and the doubt. That is engendered by this peculiar concoction of beliefs that nobody can quite explain and still remain Christian. And because most of them no longer believe in it, they do whatever they like. They are, in effect, atheists and nihilists, pretending to be idolaters and blasphemers. And this is really a form of collective neurosis. And you can also understand why they might find it hard to explain themselves, to even get out of their neurosis, because there's just so many centuries of accumulated cognitive dissonance. And I think they are suffering a form of amnesia and dementia now, because they don't really understand the burnt and bloody history of Christianity, and all they seem to be doing is blaming Jews and hating Muslims. But it would be better for them if they just accepted that they were a victim of a divine practical joke. I think it would be easier for them if they accepted that what has happened to them was inevitable, intended, destined. I think that would make it easier to accept. Is there any recovery from this? I think so, because uh, when you know when you know the consequences of something, uh, something bad, and once you've accepted it, then you can get on with talking about repairing the damage and the next step and all that. It's only when you are in denial that things seem so much more difficult. Now, obviously, it has had a profound effect on the psyche of Western man because he is literally unable to think straight and unable to talk to anyone else about it in a sensible or rational way. So, if he wants to, so I'm saying, really, you're conflicted at every stage. You want to, well, you want two things at the same time, and the two things that you want are in conflict with each other. So there's no clear way ahead. It's like walking around and round and round in circles and never getting out of the place that you need to get away from. And I'm saying that I have the answer. And it's not that hard to understand. I mean, obviously, it's a bad thing to realize that you've been cursed. But then you can work out, well, why was I cursed? Did I do something wrong? Could I have avoided it? And when you realize you couldn't have possibly avoided it, then I think in a way you are easier in yourself because if you thought, oh, it was destined to be, I was always meant to fall into that trap, rather than, oh, I'm so stupid, I fell into that trap when I could have done this to avoid it and done that or done the other thing. So I think the best thing to do is for Europeans to accept that there is no escaping their Christian history. Maybe it was a divine practical joke, and you may not be that much to blame, considering you weren't really consulted about being a Christian. You were you weren't asked about it. You were basically forced into following the religion of your absolute monarch, and then when the Americans rejected Christianity and monarchy, eventually the whole edifice of Christianity collapsed and was replaced by liberalism, and now liberalism has failed after Nazism has failed, and fascism and communism and socialism. So it's actually in a way quite good news. You've tried everything else. So there's nothing left but secular Quranism or Islam, as you prefer. It can't be Hinduism or Buddhism. So do you understand why it might be so liberating in a way? If you thought that there was really no escape from being Christian, and indeed there wasn't because it was forced onto you, and so you were meant to learn a lesson, and then you could accept the lesson, accept the correction, accept that you did wrong, and look for the silver lining in that particular cloud. And really be grateful that there is another religion that is better than Christianity for you to adopt. So actually, it's all good news. It's just your attitude that needs adjusting. Because if it was inevitable that Christianity was a necessary process um, in a sense that it was a what would you call it? The metamorphosis of an insect, and so it's got egg and larvae and pupa and chrysalis. Is that how it goes? Let me just check. Egg, larvae, pupa, and adult. So if you regard Christianity as a kind of object lesson against idolatry and making up your own religion, then well, you've turned a corner. You've turned a corner of human development. You will finally realize why it is so wrong to make up a false religion and tell lies. And even though it was okay for a bit, it eventually broke down. And when it finally broke down, you had to find a new religion, and the new religion is actually better than the old religion. So I think this is the way to look at it, and this is the way I will be presenting it.